Welcome to Escape the Noise, a podcast about hiking, mental health, and everything in between. I'm Joe Vogel, your host. We're coming to you from the Silicon Slopes studio in downtown Provo, Utah. Our guest this week, Tina Crowder-Bean, a prominent leader of the local hiking community and admin for the popular Facebook group Hike the Wasatch, which has over 34,000 active members. Tina is an Orem, Utah native. She did some backpacking and hiking in college, but got busy with life and raising a family of 9 kids until around the age of 50 when the inspiration to get outdoors struck again and has been a huge part of her life ever since. So you mentioned the 2 trails, main trails, to get to the summit of Timpanogos. He preferred Timpanuki. I think you mentioned that you prefer Aspen Grove. Is that
Aspen Grove is a little bit steeper?
Yeah,
but it helps you. You kind of wind through 15 waterfalls as you go up the Primrose Cirque, and then you get up into the Emerald Basin, Emerald Lake area.
Yeah,
I just think it has more to see. There's more mountain goats along that trail.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. There are places to stop along the way. The other trail is just as great. I just like Aspen Grove more.
Yeah,
so.
I think I'm probably with you there. Yeah. And it's really cool. I mean, obviously the waterfalls are amazing, but when you're looking back down on Sundance and that whole side, it's gorgeous, right?
Right, it is. Usually those waterfalls dry up by the end of July, but with the last 2 water years, those waterfalls have been running all summer, and hopefully this summer we'll get them. There's one that you actually hike behind when you go on the trail.
Yeah.
It just comes down in front of you, and you hike behind the waterfalls. You go, make your way up the mountain.
Awesome.
So
is Timpanogos the most common hike you do, or are you kind of hiking other mountains a lot more than
no. In fact, we used to do Timpanogos as a group 4 times a year, different times of the year. We did it in the snow, we did it in the fall, we did it in the wildflower season. Mm-hmm. But our group we're very diversified. We literally hike a different trail every time we get out. We could hike 300 different trails a year.
Yeah.
That's how diversified we are. We take our people all over the Uintas.
Yeah.
We take our people up Little and Big Cottonwood Canyon, Mill Creek Canyon. Mm-hmm. We take people out to, what's it called? Daniel Summit area over in south of Heber. We hike all along the Wasatch Front, down in Payson Canyon area, Hobble Creek, Springville, you name it. We're Aspen Grove, we're everywhere, Midway. We just take people wherever there's a gorgeous place to take them. And they are willing to drive to get to the trailhead.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we carpool together. That saves time and parking spaces. And they love it. The social aspect is this becomes kind of like their second family. Yeah. It's a hiking family. And I can say my closest friends now are people from my hiking group. I even met my husband on a hike. Yeah. So my current husband, I was divorced, and then I met my husband.
So tell us about that. Tell us that story.
Well, it was a long time ago. I was on a hike in Alpine City. They were doing an Alpine City Days hike. Yeah. And I happened to be talking to a woman, and a guy behind me goes, "Are you Tina Crowder?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you're the one that's been talking to me on my page, wasatchhiker.com, asking questions." Mm-hmm. I said, "Oh, I didn't know it was an older guy that ran that page. I thought it was some young guy." And so he started giving us a lot of ideas as to where to take the group hiking. Yeah. And we started another group called Wasatch Peak Baggers back about 10 years ago. And it was anyone who just wanted to climb peaks. It wasn't just hikes. It was peaks only. And you had to be in pretty good shape and go at a good moderate pace. So he and other guys and me, we went every Saturday. We hit a different peak. We pretty much have hiked almost every peak along the Wasatch. And that grew into a huge group. And it became very aggressive in that people wanted to do more rigorous types of mountains. And they went outside of Utah, more mountaineering. Right. So I handed that over to another guy who's a mountaineer. And he runs that page. Okay. And so, but my husband, I was divorced, and we started hiking a lot together and got married 6 years ago.
Great way to meet a person.
Yeah, and he's a great hiker. He loves it. He knows it better than anybody. He knows every trail on the Wasatch.
Well, we should get him on this show, too.
He's not a talker, though. But he does have this cool backcountry ski map on his office wall that everybody loves to come look at. Yeah. And he literally has redlined every trail he's ever done, and it's all connected. He's got just a few left to do, and then he'll be done.
That's awesome. So tell us about, you mentioned this group's going all over the place, right? down south, up by Salt Lake, Heber, all over the place. So what's like a hidden gem? What's a place that's not as crowded that, hopefully this won't make it crowded. But
you mean in Utah?
In Utah, yeah.
Because we used to do hiking trips a lot before COVID. COVID kind of changed the way we do things.
Yeah.
Our group has gotten so huge. We don't do trips anymore, but we have lots of little splinter groups within Hike the Wasatch of people who have joined up with other fellow hikers. And we have a guy that started a group called the Swell Hikers. And we go down to the San Rafael Swell. He does this every 2 weeks from the fall all the way to spring. And anyone's welcome to come and they explore that part of Utah. Mm-hmm. We do a lot in Uintas. We have groups that go out there. We love to hike out there. Other than that, I can't think of any hidden gems other than we don't want to tell you about it because that's been one of our biggest issues. We have a lot of hiking issues that have come across in the last few years, especially with the explosion of social media.
Yeah.
And one of those is the overcrowding.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot more people living in Utah, and COVID brought them outside because they had nothing else to do. And we're happy. We want people outside.
Yeah.
But when you get people who are not educated on trail etiquette or are coming to have a good time and party and get drunk, it ruins it for others.
Yeah, it does.
And so we've had some issues with that.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It is kind of a paradox where on the one hand, what makes hiking fun is you're kind of away from people, right? But at the same time, at Timpanogos Hiking Company, we're always promoting people to get out hiking because we know the benefits of it. I know that, you feel similarly, like you want people to do this because it's so helpful, valuable. But yeah, there is obviously etiquette, right?
Right.
So can you talk to us about that, like just some basics?
Yeah, I'll tell you about some of the biggest issues in trail etiquette. And we use our page to educate people because it's similar to back in the 1960s, smoking was very common. I know my parents smoked from the 1940s all the way till I was a kid. And the only way that became socially unacceptable was to bring that issue to light in the media. And it became, they told people this is harmful for you. Well, we've been doing that with hiking issues, trying to bring to light those things that are harmful to the hiking community. Yeah. And so a lot of it is, the biggest issue is with dogs and trash and noise. Yeah. So talk about noise. Some people think that they can play their music while they're hiking, but people are coming to escape the noise, literally, like your logo says. So they don't want to hear your music, so put in your earbuds. Dog owners are, there's a lot of hikers that own dogs, and that's great. Dogs are allowed in certain places, but they're not allowed in Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon. Yeah. You can get a $600 fine if you bring your dog into those canyons because those are watersheds. And so the dog waste is very toxic, the EPA says. Yeah. So we've had problems with people. They don't pick up their dog's waste, and they either leave it in a bag by the trailhead or along the side of a trail, or they leave the actual waste there where everyone can see it and smell it. And people that's been the biggest complaint in our group is that. And so I have noticed over the 5 past years, though, that it is getting better. I'm seeing less and less bags, and I'm seeing less and less waste along the trail. And I think it's because we talk about it on social media. Yeah. And when you talk about something enough, it becomes the norm. It's not acceptable to leave it. And people are getting the idea, and I'm seeing it improve.
That's good to hear.
So that's been a really good one. That's one issue that's clearing up, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say another one with dogs is being off-leash.
Off-leash, right? That's the other issue. There are canyons where you can have your dog on-leash or off-leash, like Mill Creek. I think it's every other day. You have to know which day is which. I'm not a dog owner, so I don't know. Yeah. The problem with dogs running off leash, there's several issues with that. First of all, they can disturb wildlife. Yeah. And it's even, if they even harass wildlife by barking at a moose or a deer, they can be, I won't say, but there are laws that you can shoot the dog. Yeah. In other words, that dog can be harmed by somebody on that trail if they see them harassing wildlife. And a lot of hikers don't even know this law is real. Yeah. The other thing that we see is that the dogs that are running loose can bother other dogs and become aggressive towards dogs that might be on a leash. Right. So we see conflict between dogs on the trails. Yeah. And then we see dogs who run between hikers' legs, and we've seen people get injured, or a dog just run full speed and then knock into somebody's knees and injure them. We've seen dogs jump on people and get their dirty paws on them. So it's and we have a lot of dog owners who don't like what dogs are doing on the trail. So it's not non-dog owners that are complaining. It's just that
just respecting the terrain, right?
Like we hike in Switzerland, and we just saw a documentary in Switzerland where you have to have your dog licensed in Switzerland and a permit. And they have to be trained and they have to be on leash. And that's why you don't see these issues when we hike in Europe a lot, and we don't see those issues in the Alps. And so,
wow,
it's interesting.
Well, first of all, I'm very jealous that you've hiked in Switzerland.
Save your money. Anybody can do it. But those are the main issues. Trash is another thing, is people think that there are trash cans everywhere in the mountains. They're only at the trailheads, and those get they get to overflowing.
Yeah.
You know, the Forest Service can only do so much.
Right.
So pack it in, pack it out. With everything. That's kind of the leave no trace principle.
Yeah, and that's a very important one, right? Because it's always just like really sad if you are out in this beautiful environment and you're just seeing,
it is
trash, right? It's like the last place in the world you want to see that, right?
It's interesting. I haven't noticed a lot of trash, but we have a girl in our group who actually sponsors hikes to pick up trash in the mountains. And I'm amazed at how much they find along one given trail. Yeah. And maybe I'm just not looking because I'm enjoying the scenery, but there's a lot of trash out there. So we're encouraging people to,
I've seen people do that, and that's awesome.
We're encouraging to bring a bag in your pack, and if you see it, just pack it out if it's nothing too disgusting. So,
I was going to go back too, just to one other point because last year there were like headlines about dogs and goats, right?
Oh yeah, that was the biggie last year.
Yeah, so I mean that's another reason to keep your dog on a leash, especially up there, right?
We had 2 or 3 dogs lose their lives. I think it was on Timp.
Yeah.
Because the mountain goats are threatened by dogs, and if there's nowhere for them to go, if they're cornered by a dog, they're just going to go and charge them, and with their horns, they can kill a dog, and they did.
Yeah.
My friend was up there when she came across a girl whose dog had just been gored by a mountain goat, and she was carrying the dog down on her shoulders. It was just heartbreaking.
Yeah. No, it's really sad.
So keep them on leash.
Exactly.
Is really, I think just having a dog on leash is a good practice. If you're out in the middle of nowhere where there's no other people, I think it's fine to have your dog off leash, but bear in mind they cannot disturb wildlife. So
no, those are all really good, helpful tips. And I think, like you said, with this influx of people that may be not familiar with it, some of it's just that they don't know, right? And so it's good that, pages like Hike the Wasatch can educate people. I think you're right that social media has kind of helped in that way. Probably hurt in terms of the overcrowding thing. I know the national parks, for example. Like, do you get down there a lot
We do. We go to a lot of national parks. And the problem with the overcrowding now, as you've noticed the last few years, you have to get a permit or a reservation to even park in the park. That way they know they can handle only so many people because there's only so many parking spaces.
Right.
And so that has made it more difficult for people to get to a national park. You have to plan ahead.
Yeah.
And hopefully the weather cooperates,
Yeah.
And so we've seen more people are going to national parks. There are state parks in Utah, and I think for over $100 you can buy an annual pass. And the state parks are pretty cool, like Coral Pink Sand Dunes, Goblin Valley. You've got Antelope Island with Fairy Peak. There are a lot of places to go that aren't as crowded.
Yeah.
And so,
now you mentioned Switzerland. Even if you're thinking about going abroad or even other parts of the United States outside of Utah, like what are some recommendations you have for hiking?
You know what? If you mean outside of Utah? Oh, goodness. Well, we've done Mount St. Helens and the Pacific Northwest, Rainier National Park, the Columbia River Gorge.
Yeah.
Lots of places to hike. We have done several hiking trips with our hikers to Banff, Canada, which is probably one of the most beautiful places in North America, is the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah.
Getting out. Southern Utah has plenty of places to hike. Gorgeous places. We've taken lots of groups to Oahu and Kauai in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
Those are hiking meccas.
Yeah.
And I used to do hiking tours there. Just about anywhere. But our favorite now is the Alps in Europe. There's so many different kinds of Alps. You have Alps in Italy, you have Italian Alps, Dolomites, you've got the Swiss Alps, you have the Bavarian Alps, you have the Julian Alps in Slovenia. There's just a lot of places. And now they've opened up. I think the Patagonia company did this a few years ago. They're trying to connect. I think there's over 17 national parks along the western edge of South America, along the western edge of the Andes.
Yeah.
And it's called the Patagonia Trail. And I think they need the economy to get better down there. So they're making it more safe for people to come in and hike sections of that 4,000-foot long trail.
That's amazing.
And so that's going to be the new mecca for hikers once, all these other places get so crowded.
That's incredible.
But I was going to say hiking in Europe is one of the most beautiful things you can do because they are really good at getting you to a trailhead. There are trains, funiculars, gondolas, cogwheels. They have ways of getting you to a trailhead so you don't have to even drive a car in the Alps. And those who can't hike as well you could hike up the mountain and they could meet you at the top with the train.
Yeah.
The trails are clean. Every single trail is marked with a metal sign telling you exactly how many hours and minutes it's going to take you to get to the next point. There are lots of refugios, places of refuge along the way, about every 2 miles in the Alps. And this is not just Switzerland. This is in Italy and Austria. So if you're stuck in bad weather, you can get under a lean-to shed or get into an actual refugio that's a hotel and a restaurant and take refuge. So it's like idealistic hiking.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like a whole different experience.
It is a whole different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you some of the contrasts, but you just laid them out. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, probably some things that we can learn from, right?
Yes. The Europeans, they are they're good stewards over the land.
Yeah.
And their local hiking groups take care of the trails. Nobody's paying them to do this.
Yeah.
It's different than we have a forest service that has a limited amount of money to get from Congress, Right. But these people in Europe, they respect people and they respect property and they respect animals and they respect the land. And you just don't see the issues that we have here. You don't see those issues there.
Yeah.
It's just like a heavenly place to hike and people behave themselves.
Yeah.
And the trails are immaculately clean. There's nothing in disarray. It's just really neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think that, going forward, when you have all of this beauty around us here, you hope that we can have that same level of stewardship, right? That we can take care of it and be responsible and hopefully learn some things. I agree. Like every time I've gone to Europe, I've thought two things. Like one, they seem to be better at preserving spaces. And two, it's like always less commercial somehow, there's not the need to have, suburbs and, strip malls and everything, filling up every
They're not materialistic.
They
know what matters.
Yeah. I mean, I guess because they knew they have limited space to,
They do. Yeah.
And, so there's less development, I guess.
Right. The people they just respect their trails. They take meticulous care of them.
Yeah.
And they don't get out to party and get drunk or anything. I see in America that people sometimes use these nature, wild places to get out and do things that they could just do as easily in their apartment. Right. They're going to party, stay home. Because then they end up trashing a campground or a trailhead or some primitive area. Yeah. And so, you don't see that there. I haven't seen it, at least. I'm sure it happens, but not in the mountains there. Yeah.
So when you go, when you went to Switzerland, how long do you stay?
Well, I went there and stayed 10 days. I went with a friend. He owns a big touring company there called Alpenwild out of Provo. So if you want the best Swiss hiking tour ever, and they feed you, they put you in chalets, go to Greg Witt. He owns Alpenwild in Provo. He'd be a great one to interview. Yeah. He knows Europe well. He knows everything.
Greg Witt, okay.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, I'll
he lives
check him
in Provo.
Because my ancestors are from Switzerland, so I got to get out there.
And I think his were too. I'm not sure. Greg, check me on that. Anyway, other than that, I've been to Switzerland. We did Austria and Italy, the Dolomites last year for 2 or 3 weeks. And this year we're heading to Switzerland for 2 more weeks to hike in Zermatt and Grindelwald. My husband hasn't been there, so I'm taking him there.
That's going to
be
awesome.
All my favorite places. Wow. And we're going to climb some mountains, and we're just going to have a blast. So
sounds amazing. Yeah, you'll have to let us
know. This is
how
what you have to look forward to when your kids grow up. Yeah. Or if you get babysitters.
I like it. That's something to look forward to for sure. Well, let me just ask you one last question. And this has been just awesome talking to you about all of your experiences hiking and the success of Hike the Wasatch and all of this. But if you were to give us your top 3 local hikes, what would they be?
Top 3. Oh goodness, that's hard. That's a hard question because I always say every hike, the hike I'm on is my favorite hike.
Oh, that's a good answer.
I like hiking Mount Nebo.
Okay.
That's a 9-mile round trip hike with about 4,100 feet of gain.
That's the tallest mountain on the Wasatch.
It is the highest at 11,900 on the Wasatch, but it's not the highest peak in Utah, which is Kings Peak. I love hiking the Pfeiffer Horn.
Nice.
And these aren't just easy hikes; these are mountain climbs. And then I love Lone Peak.
Yeah.
There are things you can't see from the valley that you get to see when you're on the Lone Peak Wilderness Ridge.
Yeah.
You get to see into this huge, it's like a crater on the north side of Box Elder Peak. It's actually, I don't know what you call it. There's got to be a geological term for it. But it looks like it's a caved-in crater like Mount St. Helens. And you can't see it until you're up on the Lone Peak Ridge.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of great hikes.
Yeah.
We love the Uintas. Can't beat the Uintas.
And
Lots of lakes.
All three of those peaks you mentioned, by the way, we're offering badges for this year. So,
and we'll be taking people up all summer. We usually do a peak a week or 2 peaks a week. Yeah. And I'm not the only one now that guides the hikes. I have several friends in the group that help sponsor other hikes. When I can't do it, they're there to do it. We try to have hikes every good weather Saturday if we can.
Yeah.
And we do evening hikes. We do lots of them are morning hikes. We start in the morning and get done by noon. And we have this special little thing that we've been doing for years is everybody brings some healthy food and we have a potluck at the trailhead after if we end at noon. And one guy even said, I come for the food. But other than that, we have a great time. That we don't have to drive home and be hungry and then eat your peanut butter and jam sandwich at home. Yeah. You get something healthier.
Have something nice out there, right?
Anyway, but there are just too many trails to say which one is the best.
Well, you picked some good ones,
They're
but
all great.
I think your first answer was a great answer, right? Which is whichever trail you're on, right?
Whichever trail. Because it's being in the present, enjoying what you're doing right now that really makes the difference. And you don't have to hike a peak or go 10 miles to feel like you accomplished something on your hike. I think the best part is just being out there and being part of it and being present in that moment.
Yeah.
So,
well, Tina, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're definitely going to have to stay in touch and hear about your adventures. Thanks again.
You bet.
Thanks again to Tina Crowder for joining us. You can follow her at Hike the Wasatch on Facebook. Escape the Noise is produced by Timpanogos Hiking Co. I'm your host, Joe Vogel. A big thank you to Kai Bradford for his assistance with scheduling and production, to the Wildfires for our intro music, and to Silicon Slopes and Weston Tanner for hosting us and helping us make it all happen. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you again next episode.